In August of 1992, the research vessel Aletheia departed from Valdez, Alaska, under overcast skies and a thinning radio signal. Its mission to investigate a sudden spike in seismic activity near the trench known as Chimera's Rift, a yawning chasm for miles deep and surrounded by naval exclusion zones. Captain Sarah Elridge, a former Navy officer turned Marine expedition leader, stared across the steel-gray waters. With her were Dr. Elias Marr, marine biologist and lead researcher, Sophie Tran, sonar technician, Mateo Varga, deep-sea submersible pilot, Frank Dunn, engineer and longtime friend of the captain. The team was experienced, professional, rational, that made what they were about to encounter all the more terrifying. The Aletheia crossed into the uncharted grid at 2:06 a.m. as they passed the 170W marker. All their compasses spun. Sonar began pinging irregular pulses. The sea grew unnaturally still. Then, a sound came from the deep, a thrum like a heart, too big to belong to any creature known to science. They had arrived, at precisely 7:19 hours. Sophie triangulated the origin of the seismic pulses. They weren't random, not tremors, not shifts in tectonic plates. The pattern was too perfect. A slow, resonant rhythm that echoed through the trench like a mechanical heartbeat. She leaned in toward the sonar readout, brows furrowed. It's not moving. 13,000 feet down, stationary in a trench pocket that doesn't even exist on hydromaps. Rourke pulled up satellite overlays. The area in question was marked as a dead zone. No surveys, no cable routes, no previous dives, just a vast blank spot in a sea of lines and data. "We'll send the sub," Elias said, his voice tense but controlled. Mateo volunteered before anyone else could speak. "I'll take the deep lock." The submersible was prepped quickly, its reinforced hull designed for maximum pressure dives. The lights blinked to life, glowing dimly as it was lowered on rails into the churning water. The crew stood in silence as the tether disengaged and the craft began its descent into blackness. "Godspeed," Sophie whispered as the external feed faded into dark blue. 8,000 feet. Mateo's voice came through with static around the edges. "Visibility's low, silts kicked up, but the readings are stable. 9,200 feet. Something's changing down here," Mateo muttered. "The trench walls are curving like a funnel. 10,000 feet. There's something ahead." The control room went still. "Mateo, what are you seeing?" I think it's a structure, a wall, not rock, not metal either. It's obsidian-like, reflective, perfectly smooth." Static buzzed. "It's carved." "No, it's etched. Symbols, dozens of them, flowing along the wall like veins." Sophie froze. "Veins? Yeah, that's what it looks like. Glowing veins, bioluminescence, maybe." 10,400 feet. Then a sound none of them had ever heard echoed through the comms, a distant, drawn-out moan. Not from the sub, not from Mateo. It was low and resonant, like a massive cello string being bowed underwater. A sound that didn't belong to nature or machine. Mateo's voice cracked. Wait. Something's moving." 10,700 feet. The camera feed fuzzed out, pixelated shapes, sharp flashes of light. Then it returned. Everyone leaned closer. The wall ahead was immense. It stretched beyond the camera's field of view. Symbols glowed along its surface, curling like language from a time before man. The light pulsed gently, not uniformly, but with rhythm, like breathing. As the sub's lights panned lower, the terrain changed. Mounds, large, uneven debris. Sophie asked aloud. The camera zoomed in, coral-covered, crusted, twisted into unnatural shapes. "Those aren't rocks," Rourke said. The crew stared. One of the mounds twitched, just a flicker, then another moved, a subtle flexing motion, and then, from the large as an eye opened. Slick, pale, barnacle-laced, no pupil. It blinked sideways. Two lids moving in opposite directions. The sonar erupted in a sudden wail, the waveform warping into something wrong. The revenant's walls vibrated with it. "Mateo, ascend now," Elias barked. The feed stuttered, colors distorted, then nothing. Static, double quotes. "Mateo, respond." Silence. That clock ticked on. 9:43 hours. An auto-ping. The deep lock was surfacing. 9:57 hours recovery. The sub broke the water, trailing smoke. Its hull was scorched, covered in some kind of tar-like residue. The hatch was unsealed. Mateo was gone. Inside chaos. The pilot's harness was shredded. The emergency lights were blown out. Panels warped inward, not outward, as if something had come in. Sophie climbed into the cockpit and immediately gagged. The air was damp, metallic, and wrong. She found the black dashbox. Back in the control room. She and Rourke loaded the data. They watched the last 30 seconds on a loop. Nothing. Then dash. For a single frame, less than a blink, a face filled the screen. Pale, massive, its surface armored, encrusted, coral and deep-sea wrought. An eye rolled slowly, covered in cloudy film. Then the lids blinked, not vertically, but diagonally crisscrossed, almost arthropod-like. Sophie gasped, and then black. A sudden jarring static burst cracked through the speakers, and a voice, only one word, "Open." Everyone in the control room fell silent. Outside, the sea was unnaturally still. Elias stood by the railing staring into the dark. That wasn't a war, he whispered. Sophie turned, her voice shaking. What was it? He looked back at her, pale, distant, like someone who had seen something they could never unsee. It was a face. Mateo's sub broke the surface just before dusk, battered, listing to one side. The exterior scorched in streaks of black like burn marks that came from within. When the crane hauled it onto the Revenant's deck, silence fell across the crew. Elias climbed up first, expecting the worst. The hatch creaked open under his gloved hands. A rush of foul-smelling steam hissed outward, hot and chemical. Inside the cockpit was warped. Instrument panels were melted. Some fuses fused together like candle wax. The seatbelt lay undone, soaked in moisture. But there were no signs of a struggle, no scratches, no broken locks, no Mateo. Where is he? Sarah whispered, stepping up behind Elias. Elias shook his head. Gone. Frank arrived moments later with a handheld Geiger counter. He scanned the inside of the cabin. The device crackled violently. Not electrical, Frank muttered, adjusting the settings. This is ... I don't know. Like radiation, but not any kind I've seen. Look at this. He pointed to the readings. It's spiking in waves, almost like it's pulsing, and it's concentrated in the pilot's seat. Is it safe? Sarah asked, backing away. No, Frank answered honestly. Nothing about this is. By nightfall, the ship was quiet again. Too quiet. The waves had calmed, but not naturally. It felt ... staged. The sea below no longer sounded like water. The hum beneath the hull was alien. Sophie sat alone in the comms room, fiddling with the hydrophone, trying to process the sonar data recorded before contact was lost with Mateo. Her headphones crackled as she filtered out static, trying to isolate background noise. That's when she heard it. A low tone, not electronic, not seismic, organic. Then another. It wasn't just noise. It was rhythmic, like breath. No, like chanting. She froze, rewound, played it back again and again. It's looping, she murmured aloud. Same sequence every 3 hours. She flagged the others and brought them in. You sure it's not whales? Elias asked, staring at the waveform on the monitor. No whale sings in a recursive loop with harmonic resonance. This isn't communication between animals. It's a message, sent with purpose. Frank stared at the screen, pale. If it's a message, who's it for? No one answered. The chanting continued, faint, eerie, hypnotic, cycling every 3 hours like a heartbeat under the waves. Later that night, Elias stood alone on the outer deck. The sea was a mirror. No wind, no crests, just black glass stretching in all directions. He lit a cigarette and stared out, trying not to think about Mateo, about the eye they'd seen. The face. The silence shattered. Bang. A loud hollow thud rang through the hole. He froze. Bang. Again, this time from the starboard side. He turned and sprinted to the hatch, shouting, Frank, you hearing that? The engineer was already halfway up the stairs from the lower deck, his face pale. I was in the engine room, Frank said, panting. It came from inside the bulkhead. The metal's dented, warped outward. What you mean, outward? Elias demanded. Frank swallowed, like something inside the hull struck it. That's when it happened. 3 deep, deliberate knocks. Boom. Boom. They weren't echoes, they weren't accidents. They were purposeful. Elias and Frank stared at each other. It's trying to get in, Frank whispered. Sophie, standing behind them now, shook her head slowly. No, she said. They turned. Her eyes were wide, glassy, haunted. It's not trying to get in. She pointed to the warped bulkhead. It wants us to come out. Back in the control room, the hydrophone spiked again, but this time there were 2 channels. One was the chant, repeating the other, new, deeper, slower. It wasn't a voice, it was breathing, shallow, gurgling, close. Sarah adjusted the gain. The breathing was being transmitted from less than 100 meters below the hull. Whatever it is, she said, her voice shaking. It's right beneath us. Elias activated the deck lights. The ocean lit up in patches, but all they saw was calm water. Frank checked the sonar, no movement. It's just ... sitting there. It knows we're watching, Sophie whispered. It's waiting. Sarah grabbed her arm. For what? For the loop to finish, she said, nodding toward the audio feed. The chant resets in 17 minutes, and every time it does ... something changes. As if on cue, the ship shuddered. The lights flickered. The temperature dropped. Condensation formed along the walls. Is that fog? Frank asked, backing away. No, Sophie muttered. It's mist. Seawater mist. From inside the ventilation system. That's when they noticed the sound. Not from below, but from the hallway outside the control room. Slosh. Slosh. Wet footsteps, slow, measured. Frank, Elias, and Sarah stood frozen. Sophie turned off the lights. The footsteps stopped. A dripping sound followed. They held their breath, then a low rasp of air, like lungs inhaling after centuries of silence. Sarah, trembling, reached for the emergency axe on the wall. They heard another bang, this one much closer, from the metal storage room directly across the hall. Boom. Elias stepped forward, hand on the latch. Sophie stopped him. No, she said. Not this time. Everyone backed away. The noise stopped. The lights flickered back to life, and the chanting on the hydrophone reset. But it was no longer the same now. It was faster, more urgent. The tones had changed, more guttural, layered in strange overtones that didn't belong in any known frequency. Frank stared at the spectrogram. There's something embedded in the waveform. Sarah leaned in. A shape formed, a spiral, like a nautilus shell, repeating endlessly. The same one carved into the obsidian wall. It pulsed on the screen, and then the waveform blinked for exactly one frame, less than a heartbeat. An image flashed. A mouth, circular, ringed in teeth, far too many teeth. Then it vanished. The monitor went black, and Sophie said what everyone was thinking: they're waking up. Set in 1992, 13,000 feet below sea level, a horror mystery narrative. Elias's knuckles whitened around the controls of the reserve sub. The cockpit was humid, claustrophobic. Outside only inky darkness, disturbed by slow-moving particulates that shimmered under the faint lights of the deep lock 2. He breathed slowly, methodically, the kind of breath someone takes when they're trying to calm obsession masquerading as logic. Above him, Sophie's voice tried to cut through the growing static. Elias, we're detecting increasing geothermal stress. Please respond. Silence. He was descending past 12,500 feet. Then the seafloor appeared, jagged, black, like teeth turned sideways. In the distance, the rift gaped like a wound torn into the Earth's crust. A strange, phosphorescent blue leaked from within, pulsing like a heartbeat. It wasn't natural light. It was structured, rhythmic, as if reacting to him. And then it moved. The light shifted, revealing patterns, glyphs, maybe. Not etched by nature, but something deliberate, ancient, intelligent. Elias whispered, This is not a creature. It's a temple. Suddenly, from the rift, something emerged, thin as a steel cable, yet swaying like seaweed. A tendril, pale, translucent, and impossibly long, drifted toward the sub, not with aggression, with purpose. Elias didn't flinch. He held his breath as the tentacle reached the front. VIEWPORT. It didn't grab. It tapped, a soft, deliberate tapping, tap, tap, tap. Then it traced a spiral on the glass. Again, not random. A pattern, a language. Elias whispered to himself. It's trying to read me. The sonar blared suddenly. Then it went dead. And all cameras except one cut out. That last lens showed something rising behind the rift. A face, not humanoid, not animal, a vast undulating surface that suggested a face. Layers of crusted barnacles, tendrils and bioluminescent sacs, forming what looked like sockets and a grotesque smile. And below them a circular mouth lined with concentric rows of teeth like a lamprey's, deep, endless, and twitching with movement. And then it spoke, not with sound, not even telepathy in the traditional sense. It injected thought, like ink into water, directly into Elias's mind. His pupils dilated, sweat beaded on his brow. But he smiled, a slow, peaceful, childlike smile. From the ship above, Sarah slammed her fist on the console. He shut off the comms. What the hell is he doing? Sophie's voice trembled. The signal is still active. He's just not answering. In the sub, Elias leaned forward. He whispered back into the abyss, almost reverently. I understand now. You're not alone down here. You never were. Then, all feeds cut. Back aboard the DSV Sentinel, panic erupted. Sarah ordered an emergency retrieval. Bring him back now. Frank tried to engage the sub's failsafe auto-return, but it didn't respond. Something's jamming us. Sophie replayed the last milliseconds of the feed on loop. The tentacles spiral. Her eyes widened. It's a pattern. It's not random. It's a key. She translated it quickly, not into language but into data. 12 hours, she whispered. Whatever's down there, it's waiting for something. Hours passed. Frank went silent in the engine bay. Sophie sat at her console, decoding more fragments, pieces of sound, sonar loops, radiation pulses. Everything pointed to intent. This wasn't an animal. This was a mind. Something old. Sarah paced the command deck, refusing to believe Elias was gone, until something breached. Not the sub, but water. From the ceiling, dripping even though they were in a sealed deep-sea vessel. Sophie gasped. This isn't a leak. It's condensation. It's breathing. They opened the pressure hatch and retrieved the sub manually. It was intact, but it was empty. No Elias. Only his watch placed neatly on the pilot's seat, still ticking in. Reverse. Sarah collapsed onto the floor. He's gone. But Sophie's voice was distant now. She stared at her monitor, at the feed that had somehow restarted, showing a different view of the trench, a larger opening. Now the rift had grown. From it, multiple tendrils now floated. Not aggressive, not curious, welcoming. Frank finally spoke. He stood over the main viewport where the lights outside flickered without cause. He's not dead, he said quietly. He's transformed. It gave him something. Sophie turned slowly toward him. What do you mean? Frank smiled faintly. Elias isn't coming back. But he's not gone either. He's part of it now. He pointed at the spiraling pattern scrawled on the sub's exterior, etched from the inside. A warning, a message, or maybe an invitation. 3:45 a.m. red emergency lights strobed through the lower deck corridors as klaxon screamed. Sarah slammed the chamber door shut behind them. sealing off the flooding engine room. Pressure integrity's dropping fast. Sophie shouted from the control panel, "We've got a breach somewhere." No, multiple breaches. Frank wiped salt from his face and stared down at the puddle left by the thing that looked like Mateo. That wasn't him. It wasn't even human. From outside, a scrape. Not claws, suckers. Dragging, like flesh against steel. The Alethea lurched sideways again, groaning as if the entire hull was being twisted. Somewhere near the stern they heard metal buckle, a sharp, wet crunch, like something chewing through aluminum. Frank raised his rifle toward the porthole. "We've got something on the side of the ship. It's climbing." The vessel shuddered. Boom, boom, boom. 3 knocks again. Only this time, from above, they scrambled to the bridge. Sophie's monitors blinked static, but one feed showed a massive silhouette now clinging to the Alethea's dorsal hull. Not just a tentacle, not a limb, a full form, ridges, fins, eyes too many eyes, and in the middle a gaping, flower-like mouth that never stopped moving as if speaking soundless. "Words," Sarah whispered. "What is that?" Frank paled. "That's no creature. That's a god we weren't meant to meet." A shriek filled the ship's audio sensors, not sonar, not human, the kind of sound that vibrated in the blood. Behind the eyes, Frank collapsed, nose bleeding, ears leaking. Sarah covered hers, screaming, "Kill the feed. Shut it off." Sophie cut power to the external cameras. Silence. For a moment. It was as if the thing had paused, listening. Then came a sound they'd never forget, a slow, wet exhale through the hull, like something breathing in, and with it a pulse. The lights flickered. All digital systems reset. The clocks froze at 3:44, the exact time of impact. Sophie gasped. "Guys, the stars are wrong." On the main observation screen, the starscape had changed. Familiar constellations were gone. No moon, no satellite pings, no compass readings, time. Frank stirred, eyes dazed. "It's taking us somewhere." Sarah backed away from the screen. "No, it's not moving the ship." She turned to Sophie. "It's moving the ocean." A slow, rising hum vibrated through the vessel, not mechanical, but organic. They ran to the dorsal observation deck. Through the reinforced glass, they saw it. The trench itself was changing, not collapsing. Opening like a wound, slowly splitting. Wider. And at its center, a chasm within the chasm, lit from within by that same impossible blue glow. Buildings moved in the distance, or were they bones? Structures taller than skyscrapers, but bent like spines. A gate now stood exposed, towering, circular, etched with massive glyphs that pulsed with every beat of the sonar. Sarah whispered, "It's a door." Sophie finished, and we answered. The knock, the gate opened. Inside, blacker than night, something moved inside it, not approaching. Waiting. The Alethea began to descend. No engines, no propulsion. Just gravity, or something stronger. Sarah turned toward the crew. "We don't have a choice anymore." She gripped the railing as lights dimmed again. "We've been invited in." Dawn, 6:11 a.m. The first light crept over the glass-like surface of the ocean, painting the sea in pale gold, yet the Alethea cast no reflection. Dead calm. Sarah stood on the upper deck with binoculars, scanning the horizon. No wind, no birds, no sound, but the ship was no longer drifting. It was being encircled below the surface. Soft concentric ripples formed and reformed like sonar waves, but originating from no source. Frank muttered, clutching his rifle like it meant anything. "Now it's still down there, moving, watching." Sophie ran her finger across the nav panel, where something strange had begun to draw itself, a spiral, not a route, not a current, a symbol. Autonomous, unstoppable. As the spiral widened, lines of text appeared beside it in ancient, indecipherable script, but Sophie recognized the shape. "I've seen this before. In Depotion myths, Mayan, Polynesian, even Norse storm markings." She pulled out a laminated research sheet, aged diagrams of deep-sea etchings found across trenches, shipwrecks, and prehistoric cave paintings. Side by side, the match was exact. "It's not just a shape," she whispered. "It's a sigil. A calling mark." "Calling what?" Frank asked. Sarah answered with steel in her voice. "Whatever we let wake up." She turned, storming to the control deck. "I'm initiating the scuttle protocol. We're not bringing this thing back to the surface." "Wait, that'll kill us too," Frank snapped. "Better 3 of us than 3 million. Sophie hesitated. "But what if the ship doesn't sink? What if it gets absorbed?" As Sarah keyed in the ignition sequence for the self-destruct charges in the engine room, the radio, long dead, crackled to life. Static, then a voice. Elias.com. Eerily calm. "I saw everything," he said. Sarah froze. Sophie leaned in. "Elias, how?" "It's not what we thought," Elias continued. "It's not alive the way we define it. It sleeps beneath a door, a gate, buried beneath eons of pressure and ritual. It doesn't move through time. It waits. It waited for someone to remember it." His voice trembled, not in fear, but reverence. "I heard its thoughts, felt its pulse. It spoke without sound. It showed me oceans that weren't ours." Frank whispered, "He's not alone." Then Elias' voice changed. The radio distorted, warped, as though 2 voices overlapped in perfect dissonance. "One human. One not. Said you looked at it. Now it sees you too." The ship lurched, lights dimmed, pressure dropped. Every screen showed a new image. The spiral, now glowing red. All clocks froze. Again, 3:44 a.m. Frank backed away, whispering we didn't wake. He turned to them. We were summoned. Suddenly, the ship's depth sensors began reading impossible numbers. 20,000 meters, 50,000.1000. It wasn't depth, it was distance from reality. The Alethea wasn't sinking, it was being drawn in. Sophie cried. The water around us, it's folding. We're not in the ocean anymore. From beneath the ship a shadow bloomed, not rising, expanding, endless and slow. And then, a sound, not sonar, not whale song, a heartbeat, one beat every 5 seconds, and with each beat, a new voice whispered through the radio. Come closer, you belong, you're hollow enough to carry it. Sarah's hand hovered over the scuttle trigger, her voice cracked. We still have time. If we detonate the core, we might stop the collapse. But then they heard something else, footsteps. On the metal walkway above. Frank raised his rifle. That's impossible. There's no one left. From the corner hallway stepped Matteo. His flesh was wrong. His skin shimmered like slick algae. His hair floated in unseen currents, and behind him, Alina, then Dr. Greaves. One by one the dead returned, smiling, silent, soaked in salt, eyes glowing faintly blue. They spoke in unison. There is no scuttling. There is no escape. Sophie stumbled back. They're not real. They are, Sarah said coldly. They're what we become. The spiral on the screen began to rotate now, slowly, and the sea outside pulsed like lungs breathing. Sophie screamed, grabbing the manual override lever. We're ending this. But the lever wouldn't move. Frozen. Frank threw the emergency switch. Nothing. All systems locked. Through the porthole, a new light appeared. The gate reopened inside it. Eyes blinked open in the dark. Thousands, they saw everything, and now they saw them. Sarah and Frank fought their way to the engine room. The sea around them boiled. Sophie activated the self-destruct. With 5 minutes remaining. Frank stayed behind to ensure the detonation sequence completed. Sarah and Sophie took the emergency raft, the sea now glowing from beneath with a light the color of ancient bone. Behind them, the Alethea exploded in a plume of steam and fire. Silence followed. Then, a low rumble from beneath. A massive shape breached just once in the smoke. Towering, tentacled, eyeless, and then, it sank. Gone. 30 years later in 2022, satellite mapping detected impossible topography deep within Chimera's rift, a circular ruin. Newly exposed, a new crew prepared for launch. Among them, a woman named Dr. Sophie Tran, now older, hands scarred, and eyes darker. When asked why she joined the mission, she replied with one sentence, I need to know if it remembers. And from below, across the sonar waves, something whispered yes.